I might start crying.
Okay, so we're going to get started. Welcome to those who have ventured here at this early morning hour. Early to us. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. We have Jameson Local, Adrian Hernandez, and Kirk Phillips, and myself, Chelsea Otwell. I will be facilitating and also presenting research. So during this session, we will be discussing the use of anthropological methods when conducting research about games and gaming cultures and how this can inspire innovative approaches to apply research. We will place particular emphasis on the cultural phenomena of creative design and research development, knowledge sharing through games, and online community building among gamer groups. We will also provide an opportunity to juxtapose these topics with the methodologies of applied research to prompt a discussion about new directions in anthropological practice. So you will all have an opportunity to debate the best methods for conducting anthropology in different arenas of human culture and provide your own insights on what applications are possible for such research.
We're not on a pedestal up here. You're all on a pedestal with us. So please chime in whenever you want.
Yes. So before we begin, I just want to provide a quick note about the layout of the session. We're going to have it broken up into 3 sections. So Jameson and I will be speaking in the first section, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss our topics. And then we'll move on to Leah and Kurt, and then we'll discuss their topics. And at the end, we'll have a general discussion on everything. And we will have the opportunity to come back to anything that got missed or we had to cut off early. I'll take notes and do it. All right. So first, we will be hearing about Jameson's research in game design. Jameson has identified ways in which anthropological research and game design overlap. And he will discuss the lessons social scientists can learn from game designers in this research.
Thank you. So, unsurprisingly, I've been a gamer my whole life, and I've been an anthropologist for most of my academic career. So when I had an opportunity to start developing a game for my graduate research at the San Jose State Applied Anthropology program, I was understandably very excited to have that opportunity. I'm working with a collaborator, Dr. Larry Bogad, who's a professor of performance art and theater at Davis. And he's also a member of my Dungeons and Dragons group, along with Chelsea. So we were playing the game regularly, like every week. And Larry kind of mentioned that he had been working on a game that was kind of a very light role-playing game that he would play with audiences at performances he would do, where he'd have people come up to the stage and he'd basically give them a prompt and have them role play. He would bring out audience members and basically have them become part of a performance. And we were really interested in that idea because we were role players and everything. And he kind of said, "Oh yeah, I've been tossing around this idea of like creating a role-playing game, more like D&D, but to teach people about activism." He's Larry is a longtime activist and still very active in those communities. So we thought this was an awesome opportunity. Long story short, we've been working with him to design a game that teaches people about doing things like canvassing, performance actions, public protests, and things like that. And Chelsea and I have been working on a lot of the game design for that. And as part of that, I've been studying a lot of game design from the game designer's perspectives. So the main things I'm going to talk about today are kind of revolving around these 3 interconnected ideas from what I've found in my research. And one of them is that both anthropology and game design are kind of these interesting alchemies of intuitive thinking and objective reasoning, kind of putting together the art and science aspects of both fields. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how game designers and anthropologists become what I've called temporary experts. And finally, there's the way that both fields produce individual take on the role of bridgers between collaborators, multidisciplinary teams, and the people they produce work for. So one of the first things that really stood out to me when I was initially learning about game design is that in very much the same way that anthropology has this kind of interplay between objective and subjective elements, game design is really very similar to that. They're both composed of aspects that are exacting and intuitive. They're both an art and a science, like I said before. So where we anthropologists have our theories and statistical analyses, game designers build off of established rules and have mathematical balancing elements for game statistics. And at the same time, very much the way that social science projects require intuition and finesse, especially when you're working with human subjects, game designers have to be able to turn concepts into playable mechanics, and they have to grasp this ephemeral idea of what it means for something to be fun. The balance can be really difficult to find, and it's very much based on the project. So some games might be perfectly fine having seemingly arbitrary rules and mechanics tacked on to a theme that doesn't necessarily correlate to the game too terribly much. In the same way that a lot of anthropological studies are going to be more heavily reliant on demographics than they are on qualitative findings. But striking the right balance between what you need to do in a given project, whether it's a game or a study, requires a really good understanding of whatever problem you're trying to address or whatever system you're trying to implement. And thankfully, game designers and anthropologists have this very broad set of skills. So one of the other things that really popped out to me in the beginning of my research is that both fields kind of create these people that I've called temporary experts. And that's basically people who have to study a lot about a new subject to enter a field. So an anthropologist is going to do a lot of, back studying or studying like literary research and stuff to go start with a new community. They might need to have an understanding of the history of the region that they're working in. They're going to want a local understanding of local laws and customs, bureaucracies that are active in the place that they're working. They're going to want fluency in local languages, things like that. And it's very similar for a game designer. If you're a game designer and you're working on a game with a World War II theme, you need to know about military history. You need to know about geopolitics of the 1930s and 40s. You want to know about weapons and garb and things like that, battles that took place. So you have to go outside of your main area of interest or your own field, whether it's anthropology or game design, and kind of learn all these little bits and pieces of other subjects that you're going to kind of use to bring together. You're going to make this hopefully soup of interesting ideas that all come together. And the last major point is that, like I said, game designers and anthropologists tend to fill this intermediary role between multidisciplinary teams. They are really good at communicating ideas between people who might not share the vocabulary, whether actual language vocabulary or conceptual vocabulary. Both roles kind of do a lot of this translating and kind of bridging between people. So where anthropologists might have to explain complex bureaucratic requirements to community members while also adequately reporting those community members' concerns to local government officials, game designers might have to communicate coding limitations to artists and graphic designers and artistic concepts to programmers, which can be a very difficult thing to navigate at times. So the more we're able to master this diverse vocabulary and act as bridgers, the more effective we're going to be at managing projects and maintaining the vision of either a project or a game, whatever we have to do.
So now I'd like to transition from game design to talk about playing games, specifically tabletop role-playing games, and the effect this can have on the players. I will also draw parallels between such games and applied research methods that we talked about. First, I'd like to give you all a brief description of tabletop role-playing games to make sure we're all on the same page. So there are many types of tabletop RPGs, each with their own set of rules and play styles, but most have the same basic structure, with the majority of participants are fulfilling a player or actor role. players role play their own characters they have created and interact with the game world and its inhabitants. So there are usually sets of adventures or missions within a larger story arc, and which is collectively referred to as the campaign. And players form a team, usually referred to as an adventuring party, and they progress through the story together. Participants will fulfill certain roles within their adventuring party through the characters they play, and they act out different personas and adapt to different challenges they face. And as they adapt to new game experiences, players may develop new or hone existing social and strategic planning skills that can carry over to other aspects of their lives, such as the development of creative problem-solving skills. So something I find fascinating about tabletop RPGs is the way they can encourage these pro-social behaviors and the fact that they have great learning potential for the participants. These potentialities are made possible through the social interactions of the participants, but also through the motivating factors of gameplay. The elements of tabletop RPGs, which include storytelling, acting, improvisation, cooperation, and strategic planning, promote these pro-social behaviors as players work together to defeat their foes, solve puzzles and problems, and explore the game world. So success or failure for the team in a particular story arc does not necessarily mean the end of the game, but it is partly dependent on the social skills of the players themselves. Individual players may be at an advantage over others at the start of the campaign, but continued play stimulates behavioral change for the participants. And failure can actually be a strong motivator for behavioral change in RPGs, as participants may try out new ways of approaching challenges or obstacles they face in and out of the game. RPGs likewise foster an environment ripe for learning from other players and the storyteller, based on this tradition of knowledge sharing through storytelling and player interactions, which is dependent on the real-world knowledge participants hold. These interactions often inspire players to self-teach by researching subjects they are exposed to through gameplay, which is also known as tangential learning. Players will use this newfound knowledge in the game, but it also adds to their world of real-world knowledge. So there are a few parallels between tabletop RPGs and applied research that I would like to point out. The methods of learning and knowledge sharing in RPGs I discussed are similar to multidisciplinary research teams who work collaboratively to solve real-world problems. And like RPG gaming groups, collaborative teams plan for and adapt to field experiences in order to attain their goals and ensure beneficial outcomes. Additionally, individual players fulfill roles and skill niches, as I mentioned, within an RPG adventuring party, and that's very similar to the way that individual researchers will also fulfill similar roles for the collaborative research teams they're part of. So as I thought about these parallels, I realized they have design implications for new directions in applied anthropology education. Some potential avenues include the creation of collaborative learning environments, adaptations to field school training techniques, and designing collaborative research forums. The intent would be the same for each of these designs, which is that of promoting tangential learning and knowledge sharing, strengthening group cohesion, and providing the space to explore and practice pro-social behaviors that are essential to collaborative work. So now we can begin our first discussion section about these topics. And so I wanted to see, before we delve into some policy, if anybody had any questions or any ideas they'd like to pose.
I'm absolutely fascinated by what you both said. There's like a lot of good insights. I could never have thought about myself, but as soon as you said it, it was like, yes, right on. Yeah. Are you saying that we could have a tabletop role-playing game to Oh, here we
Actually, speaking towards that, I do have printers so I can print them out. There is a game that was developed by anthropology students called Cards Against Anthropology. And it's free to download, and you can cut them out. And it has things like you're studying heroin users, and your respondent is shooting up, and you see a cop coming. What do you do?
Yeah.
And then you have to play the cards. And there are things like assist, back away slowly, and just trying to think through the ethics of being an anthropologist actually in the field.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm gonna look for that. Thank you. But we still need a tabletop role play.
Yeah, I would actually. I think that.
That needs to be a master's project.
Yeah.
So one of the facets actually of the game I'm developing with Larry is that I would eventually like to broaden it to other social science avenues. So you've caught me. There was definitely something that was like always bouncing around in my head.
For anyone not familiar with tabletop RPGs, this is the D&D 5e Player's Handbook, and there's a couple of character sheets in them. So I'll pass this around for anyone who wants to look at them and look at a couple of characters I like. Please don't lose those sheets. I need them.
Oh, I just want, it was, when you talk about the kind of cooperative activity, and I think Jane, I'm sorry, I missed part of it. But,
I'll
and
give
I
you
imagine you may address this, but, gaming isn't always pro-social.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
indeed,
true.
one of the fundamental features of gaming is often competition, and people sometimes abandon their collaboration in order to game up and screw someone.
I've been on the receiving end of it.
Pro-social behavior.
Yeah.
So, what are you looking at around those other behaviors, which which are part of human exchange, interaction, and are part of gameplay, but maybe not quite so much.
Right. So when you are in those situations where people are behaving more competitively, that can encourage people to begin to act more strategically. Maybe you form an alliance with somebody else who might help them, and so you might get some divisiveness there. But that's still teaching players about how to navigate difficult social situations and to negotiate and mediate. So that's also beneficial. It can be beneficial. I'm not saying it always is, or that it always feels anything to be in that position. And it's definitely not always pro-social, I agree. And I was not trying to convey that. It's important to keep that in mind. Did that answer your question? Or
Yeah, okay. And I guess that would be, in a sense, the role of the game moderator
Right.
to figure out how to tweak that a little bit.
And with any good storyteller or game master, they will moderate in that way. But I have definitely played games with game masters who are more antagonistic against their players. It's not very fun, and you know what? They also learn something from that because not a lot of people want to play with them anymore. So they might alter their behavior if they want to keep them players.
Yeah. I was first thing real quick. I am a building minister about the time, and I love it. Because a lot of the time,
Some people like
they
that.
deserve it.
There's a difference between.
Sometimes they come across the face of a statue in a church.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to pray to it, they try to seduce it.
Yes.
So.
Sometimes they deserve the antagonism, but if they're just walking through the forest, they don't deserve necessarily to have a dragon playing on top.
Well, that can be fun though.
That can be, but it's a different kind of antagonism.
Your comment is well taken. I think there are so many different nuances to human interaction. It's hard to encompass all of them with a few sentences.
This is my other thing is, have you ever ran a game that had anthropological ideas?
I mean,
Training methods, or have you tried to put in action?
not directly. I mean, I'm our group's primary dungeon master, and we have kind of this blessing of having a highly educated gaming group, every one of us has everyone either has a undergraduate degree or a PhD or multiple masters. We're all very, I guess for lack of a better word, I say left leaning. So a lot of our adventures involve like having giant marriage celebrations or talking to the horrible villains that I set up and finding out why they're sad and why they're angry. So I think my players kind of force it, and as an anthropologist and a game master, I'm very receptive to doing unusual moments like that. They can be a lot of fun. So, but I haven't actually put it into like direct action yet, but I plan to.
And a few years ago, Benjamin Dubois, who got his master's from San Jose State, who now lives in Japan, doing business development games, is working with the kind of work Jameson wants to do. He developed a game that was loosely based on an idea like the Ursula Le Guin's The Word for the World is Forest, which is kind of taking the idea of Aboriginal insight and cooperative exchange as something that could be nurtured. So it was very directly trying to figure out how do you create a game that uses that kind of anthropological content to create a storyline. And that may be something similar. And I'll be happy to give you this to introduce you. Tom.
There is a role-playing anthropology game too. The AAA's 2 years ago went to a gaming session. This is where I first was introduced to President's Anthropology. So there is one, but it's a lot more structured. And it's kind of based on cards. And it's based on powder makers, ethnography, and like basically trying to make contacts in the film industry and like getting. And then like it is interactive, so somebody can kind of like put down like, oh no, this contact's not gonna lead you anywhere, but there might be a branch to another person. So you like actually go through, and you're supposed to kind of go through this process. Like I wasn't able to play the full game, so it's not just it was kind of a mock up for us, but you see your it's too much.
Well, and see that's beneficial because something with a little bit more structure is more accessible. I mean, one of the biggest issues with RPGs is that they are kind of they're very much a niche. Like you have to be willing to, spend an hour or more creating a character in a lot of certain things. You have to be able to have the kind of patience and like headspace to sit around a table with a group of people that are just imagining, and there's not necessarily a board or anything to go along with it. So the structure of the card is pretty helpful.
Yeah, it was it was immediately understandable, but it felt like you could also add some of the nuance, the back and forth. But also just in terms of games inspired, Mass Effect is massively inspired by
I'm sure
they have like protesters at the Martian archaeological sites, and like there's the it is like this multiracial sort of Star Trek scenario.
Actually, in Neverland is inspired by graphic interviews with
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't remember.
inspired by their history, their mythology, and their life stories. And we include
As additional content
Yeah.
as well for the game where you can go and actually watch movies.
Yeah, a couple of things. I actually experienced a game probably 5 or 6 years ago now, where the game master wanted to do an alternative history for California. So it was this set in before statehood. And she drew a lot on my knowledge and study of the American population in this area. So that was fascinating to go through that exercise because for the game master it was a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
So and most of the players,
I'm sure
it was. But it was just it was an intense learning curve in a way to think about what really happened because you have to know what happened to present an alternative universe. So see your generation, my kids' generation, they game. And so it's an avenue. You have to use it. And they're using it. And they're learning things. So we need to use this interface to supplement education. In terms of practical game development, we don't need games that have already been made. I reckon every field school, every class could start off their learning circle by being a character. And you make the game right there, relevant to whatever it is that you're doing.
Right, you don't only need a restructured outcome that's something that would be the most relevant for that group.
So that's for anthropology students. I wanted to ask you guys a question based partly on what you just said about the learning for GM. And if you're developing a tabletop RPG that already has so much information for a GM learning, you want to develop it towards anthropology where there's the nuances and the ethical dilemmas and even more information on top of what a regular RPG is doing. Have you thought through that process, how that could be accessible for someone without an anthropology background to take on the role?
That has been something I've struggled with because it's tough. Not everybody has a very broad base of knowledge and information they can draw on. And we're trying to, with the role-playing game that Larry and I are designing, we're trying to include essays. We want to have like some like real academic content in there to kind of be a jumping off point, but even that's not going to be enough to say like, okay, well you need to have a working understanding of protest in the Bay Area and civil rights action and stuff. So it really, I mean, but I feel like in so many cases, and maybe it's something that RPGs need to address overall, like game masters always have to have a lot of knowledge to do it. And that's why it's kind of this intimidating role that a lot of people don't want to take on.
Players just need a handbook or the free PDF, and the game master needs the handbook and the monster manual and the Dungeons and Masters book as well.
Which is the reason why we want to make our game free or very, very cheap. At least an option that it doesn't have. And I mean, Dungeons and Dragons do that too. They have a free like, introductory book that I think is a good way to deal with the barrier.
Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast rather is working with Curse right now, and they have something called D&D Beyond,
Right.
Which is turning into an entire database that can be accessed free of charge. It has monsters, that can pay rules, and making a character sheet maker for them. So.
Which is also something that we've been doing with Roll20, where now instead of having to put all the information in your spell description into the site, you can do a search, find the spell, and just drag it into your sheet, and it auto-populates.
But unfortunately, it doesn't deal with the fact that people still need that.
The background.
Historical background or anthropological background, whatever area where you need to be able to create a believable world. But if you're just creating a fantasy, then that's fun, but it's not necessarily going to be the same. It's not going to have the same teaching potential. I mean, Chelsea brought up like people learn from playing games already, but there's definitely a way to improve that by making it more focused. But it's a challenging question. It's a very good question that we're grappling with.
I think one of the most kind of compelling kind of counters to like this deeply embedded role-playing kind of game where you need a heavy, background information is something that some companies are already using to advertise their products called alternate reality gaming, and that to me is really kind of crazy because what they do is they use the real world and around them to build an alternate world that people explore out in the world. They go find clues and they collaborate with one another on the internet about how to decrypt this puzzle. And like as a little example, Halo did this thing, which is a shooter game online, they did this thing where they just had a little thing on one of their ads that said ilovebees.com or something like that. And if you the people who are paying attention to the ad, you go onto that website and it's just all about honey and honeybees, and you're like, okay, well, what does this have to do with Halo, right? And you can order this product on there. And so basically what users would do is they're like, all right, well, I'm going to order that honey and see what this is about. And so you order the honey, and then in the honey jar, there's like clues to this other existence of Halo and these background characters and deep knowledge that really make the whole universe of Halo really deeply nuanced. And it gets the people excited. Like I got excited, and even the television show. Yeah, and you get honey. Like, yeah, this is something that the television show Lost actually did as well, with this whole the island, right? Well, they made the island real in this alternate reality, and they had this experiment on this gorilla, and you have to go onto their website and solve puzzles and things like that, and you have to use collaboration with other internet people to solve this puzzle in the real world. And I really like that kind of a design because the user doesn't need to make themselves into something new, right, to be able to sort of discover the storyline. And I find that discovering a storyline rather than having to use one pre-made in a way can kind of be really powerful.
Yeah.
And just as kind of like a different example that kind of touches more with the state of the political world today, Shia LaBeouf actually, yeah. He put up a flag just out in like this green field, and the only thing you can see in the background is the sky, and it says, "He will not divide us." And this was obviously during the campaign, and when users on Reddit, what they did was they're like, like I wonder where that is, and they're like talking like, well, it's probably in North America. They kind of tracked where he was at the time, and he was somewhere in Colorado or something like that, right? And every now and then, it was a live stream. He live streamed it over Facebook, I believe. And every now and then there would be a plane that would go across the sky. And what users did was they correlated the airplane time, yeah, with the paths that it was taking. Yeah, and so they got geographical coordinates basically from this. They were able to triangulate the position more or less, and one of the Reddit users who lived there went out there, found the flag, took it out, and replaced it with a "Make America Great Again" flag. Hat. And so I think that that kind of a game, it can really be used as it can be used in terms of storytelling something fun, but it can also be used as something to kind of provoke thought in a more or less peaceful way.
So I wonder what would be the. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that we should come back to this discussion of ARGs or ultimate games in a general discussion with others about that. But for now, I think we should make a slight shift to talking about online games and hear from our panelists. So Kirk is going to start us off with his research, which focuses on what draws viewers to Twitch streams and how professional streamers relate their obligation to peers outside of those streaming
Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure if you're attending this Salon session, you probably know something about Twitch. But if not, it's a live streaming platform where users can go on and broadcast whatever their content is. It's mostly used by gamers who broadcast their gameplay live over the internet, and people can watch, people can chat in the little chat box, and there's this whole dynamic of interplay between the audience members who are watching and the broadcasters kind of choreographing in a way the play experience for the users. Now, most people, they come for the game, but they stay for the relationships they form. When I was doing my research in 2015 and last year, I attended the TwitchCon convention, the Twitch convention in San Francisco, and I did a series of interviews, and basically what keeps people there is, the unanimous answer was personality. That's what keeps people coming to particular channels. And it's basically formed a new career model. And some streamers can earn a living solely through donations and ad revenue. Not all of them get ad revenue. And there's different ways of getting the donations and subscriptions and whatever. But yeah, some of them are streaming 8 to 10 hours a day, 5, sometimes 7 days a week. So it's certainly a full-time job, right? But to them, it doesn't feel like a job. It's gaming, you're having fun with friends, and yeah. So that's basically why people are there. And they're also there for the content, because people like to learn about games. But to be sure, they also don't. Gaming is not the only thing that they talk about. Like, it's the kind of common factor that brings them all there. But in the background, people are talking about other things. People talk about politics every now and then, gender, music, food, culture, life, right? And I think, for anyone trying to study this, the main topic of our salon session for this is in trying to study this culture or this whatever given community, it becomes fairly problematic because you have this going live stream for hours at a time, sometimes with hundreds, thousands of viewers that are spamming the chat box with all this encoded information, and long strands of text. That information is only stored for about 2 weeks on the Twitch archive. And that's problematic for the researcher because, number one, we have to identify first what's important, and depending on our objective of study, that's going to change, right? But we have to identify very quickly what's important, and then store that information somewhere else for extended study. And so, one of my questions for everyone is, what kinds of strategies can we implement to have extended study of these temporary data sources like this?
That's pretty much my main question as well. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Adelia. I do research on Twitch. My graduate research is with an online community that formed on Twitch and uses Twitch as their primary mode of connection and communication. They are called Team Queen, and they made philanthropy essential value to who they were as well. So in 2015, they raised over $300,000 for charity, which is what first made me start looking at the community from more of an academic and anthropological viewpoint. And when I was going through this research and having to find sources, I was lucky that I had connections who made it so I could access chat archives after they were gone from Twitch, and I could find the resources to get the data that I needed. But not everyone has those connections, and if you're going into this brand new and without any connections, how do you go about that? And if you're trying to study something on Twitch, where not only is the stored coded material of the videos and the archives season or even a few episodes or something, and it's kind of got that regular schedule, and you kind of know what type of shows you're going to get, which is ever changing. They just launched a new program, the affiliate program just launched new ways to subscribe to channels and a tier program and different interactions with their emotes and are connecting with other programs and other software. It's constantly moving and adding new things to it. So every day you're getting different data that could take you in a completely new direction from your original example. So that's why I was interested in making part of this and talking through those issues of the temporary data and also working with an FMC platform.
I have a question about Twitch, because it's been purchased by Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So was there a difference in doing research in Twitch before it was purchased? Or it wasn't embedded in a whole other structure of bureaucracy and after?
So Twitch kind of has this curve happening in its progression of its life. It did not start as Twitch. You've done a little bit more to the history of
It was just in
yeah.
TV.
Yeah. And
it started as that.
it has things for cooking and music and gaming and basically every category under the sun existed here, but the gaming community stayed strong while the others dwindled. So they remarketed themselves as Twitch TV, focused only on gaming, and that was kind of the launch of Twitch. And then after getting bought by Amazon, they started adding these categories back. So there's now social eating and cooking and a music channel on there, and they have an entire creative program where you could do #LifeCast or something and go about your day, not interacting with anyone, and people watch. So it's not so easy to say if it was a before Amazon type of situation that it was different because of this progression and this change and kind of returning to its source material.
Well, I was thinking primarily as in kind of response to your question, is access different as a researcher? Is the bureaucracy different?
Actually, part of the reason that Twitch went with Amazon, they had a bigger deal from Google. They could have gotten more money if they sold themselves to Google. They chose Amazon because Amazon let them retain their individuality and their own choices for doing things. So Twitch runs on its own almost. They have connections with Amazon. It's almost more like a partnership than an ownership. We have two hands over here. Whoever speaks first.
Recently Twitch has started to show a lot of TV shows, mostly in connection with releases or with big events happening. And the most recent one was Salon Creative. They streamed Bob Ross's TV show from start to finish, and because it was so popular, they are now streaming Bob Ross's TV show.
Yeah, there's a Bob Ross channel. They had wigs that everyone could buy. Yeah.
We all need to have new little trees.
And then recently, due to the launch of the Power Rangers movie, they were streaming the original Power Rangers show.
It wasn't just the original, it was all of the show from the start of it, every single version of the show and previous movies as well. And it was 24/7 in order.
But I was going to ask, how is this? Have you started to research that at all? Have you in the chats there? Are they in the chats, or do you think this is part of new people?
I haven't looked at them from an anthropological perspective. I've mostly heard things related to them. Those chats are usually tens of thousands of people at once, so they're something where if you actually want to research them, you need to get access to a chat archive to do it. Otherwise, it's going way too fast. A lot of spamming emails go on in those channels, which then gives a different nuance to understanding all of the culture because you have to understand what those emails mean as well.
Yeah, well, you guys know how far we've gone. And so I'm going to ask, I think, a simple question while we're talking. Because I know that you're on this And I'm wondering about what is sort of different or new about what we can learn and what we can teach with it. In many respects, we're familiar with, people sort of, growing up with, let's say Sesame Street, and all of a sudden they learn their alphabet from Sesame Street, right? Or there's different games on cereal boxes that teach you stuff. And so we know that people learn, in many respects, through certain kinds of games, the same things that we might have taught by older scale or just more boring methods. So we're still teaching the outcome is still the same thing, right? More or less, right? Whether it's a Montessori school or whether you're just, sort of rote drill somewhere else. But the objective is still get your ABCs, get your reading, writing, business, right? But I'm thinking also of early French post-structuralists, like the once a week or most of the class, right? If you're Jacques Lacan, if you're doing Deleuze and Guattari, you're reading books like this. They intentionally wrote like that because they felt like if we were going to learn something new, if we were going to arrive at new ways of thinking, that it had to be this disorienting experience, that you couldn't write the same way and hope to arrive at thinking a new way. And so I'm wondering if through teaching, through gaming as a pedagogical tool, gaming as a site and a method of research, what is it that we might be, what is the new thinking that we might arrive at? Not similar thinking by alternative means, but what is the new thinking we might arrive at?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk more about
Some context,
and
please.
I thought you said billiards. That's the only game I know.
There's something that Jane McConnell discusses. It's called the positive failure feedback, and this refers to a complex set of emotions and reactions to failing in a particular way that reminds you of your own sense of agency. That you have options, and that if you feel that you actually have the capability to try again and potentially succeed in the future, it gives you hope. And that's something I feel like is really missing in the education process. You don't have this safe way of trying and failing without severe consequences most of the time. There are professors and teachers who try to create that space for their students, but it's not widespread. It's not a basic technique that everyone uses. Although I don't have experience with it, I do. But so with a role-playing game or another type of game, you have the chance to practice using the knowledge that you've learned in class or working with fellow students. It might be new and scary experience for some people. And they can test out things they learned without worrying about getting a better grade. And they can be wrong and learn from that. And you need more spaces like that in education. By creating this safe space where people learn that it's okay to fail, people listen afraid of that. They're afraid to try new things and think in new ways, and they just will repeat information so that they can do well on the test. So if you create these spaces where they know it's okay to fail and they can actually learn something out of it, you create kind of a practice.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, when Chelsea's talking about failure in games, in video games, obviously there's tutorials that you start with. There are checkpoints. If you die in the game, you can return to a place instead of having to repeat the entire game. And if you classic 2D platformer model Mario, you have multiple lives as well. So it's not game over the first or the second or sometimes the third time you fail. You have that chance to learn, and that's how we get people who are game masters, spend 10,000 hours plus on a single game and can be the best in the world.
I think people need to rethink the way they react to the world failing something. It's kind of
based off of that same research in mind. I don't remember the name of it right now, but if we talk afterwards, I can pull it up. It's right there. I'll show you.
I've used the one from Warcraft.
I used many WoW articles. Yeah.
If I could follow up on Chelsea's question, this isn't, I don't know if this is new. I know it's not new, but I think it relates, and that's it. It's kids talk about instilling a growth perspective, which is essentially, people will say, well, I'm not good at X, whatever. I'm not good at writing. And growth perspective is more like, okay, I'm struggling with writing right now, but you kind of still get that I can improve, and this is how I'm going to improve. And it's pretty powerful that it strikes me that it's relevant to gaming. Because, I was a new D&D player once. You didn't know which end was up, but I didn't throw the hat in and say, I'm not good at D&D. I learned, right? And so it's so inherent to gaming for us. And so, it seems like that's a great maybe parallel to education. Right? Again, it's out there in the education field already, but it's really strongly endured.
A more succinct way of saying it, I'm not good at writing. It's learning how to add the yet to that sentence.
Right. And just real quick before we move on, I wanted to respond to that. Some way that you can apply that to game, like role-playing games, is the idea of the character that you create and the character sheet that you have. You have all these skills and abilities that you get points for at particular times when you level up, and you can see and you can gain experience rather than losing points. You gain points as you go, and so it's this really constructive way you can see it happening on the sheet and you feel very productive and like you can keep going.
Yeah.
Learning new things.
Yes.
That's a mechanics way of improving, but from the role-playing side for tabletop RPGs, many of them also include something like inspiration, where the dungeon master, if someone does some really good RP and they're really in the moment and playing their character well, the dungeon master can give them an inspiration dice to help them with further actions. And that's kind of a positive reinforcement way of saying, you're doing a good job, keep doing it.
Really good idea. You said that very eloquently.
Yeah.
One of the first things about getting it reminds me of, I'm a giver to a certain people, and I'm so happy when they open it to online communities, and not only with that, they do level up and stuff, but they actually add it into being archaeologists. And many people are realizing actually being an archaeologist, and I was watching my friend play, and I'm sure I'm watching some archaeology, and you're like an archaeologist, right? And no one's knowing what's going on, and you're actually learning all about anthropology and bioethics, and just being able to understand it easier.
Just to kind of go back to what you were talking about, mechanizing, leveling up. I think in games, it feels good to level up, or it feels good to see your level bar just totally fill up and just overcome onto that next level. And in life, there's nothing that kind of translates like that.
It's not a structured education.
Yeah,
Moving
exactly.
from second to third grade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of something like getting older, right? Like, do you feel any different now that you're 26? And
Do you
yesterday
feel
were 25?
better about your birthday
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you get older?
And
Is it still a positive feeling?
exactly, and I think that's one of the things that I think if we could kind of bridge that gap in some way to real world life, that that feeling of I did this, I accomplished this, and I feel good, and there's still more I can do with this. That would be hugely useful for just personal growth, but also interacting with the rest of the world.
We have that slippery slope of gamification.
I think it's there in life, though. I mean, it's not automatic, but it's not, you don't automatically level up in D&D, for example, either. You have to work for it. We have many ways in which we mark our progression through life. I mean, for one thing, getting degrees, we all know something about maybe
bar mitzvah or driver's license or
or raise, even if you're not in academia, a raise or promotion, or there are all kinds of personal goals, becoming a better partner, completing therapy. I mean, there are all kinds of things, that are milestones that aren't always necessarily, public, but in some of them are publicly recognized and so on.
I would add also to that, for all the shit millennials get, I'm not going to pile on to it, right? But there are real issues, right? I mean, like, I'm the first one, even I don't have the first idea of Pokemon, right? I'm the first person, I'm the first person to sort of defend when somebody's like, oh, these people in their phones or whatever. I'm like, no, it's interactive, it's social. Our generation's there for the TV. Our generation's there for the TV for 30 years and invented the internet. The people who grew up on the internet have these complex, interactive, virtual reality cyborg sort of kind of stuff, and I'm thinking, what's invented out of that sandbox, And so I think that's exciting. But at the same time, I think a fair criticism and I don't want to, sort of reify this notion of the millennial generation is a real thing, but there is, especially here in Silicon Valley, you meet people oftentimes, and whether it's the result of educational paradigms or whether it's the result of, parenting models. I won't get down on everybody gets a ribbon, right? Because everybody got their ass kicked when I grew up. I'll go ribbons over ass kicking every day. But there are these things you meet students. I meet students very frequently. They're 6 months out of, they've graduated from whether it's an undergraduate program or a graduate program, and they're 6 months and they're in a great job, and they're either at some nonprofit or they're at Google or they're somewhere, and I say, well, what's it like? How's it going? And they say, well, we were thinking how to impact. What would make a difference? Another 6 months. You know what I mean? And so I think this sort of that there is something to it. Again, I don't want to reify it, and I don't want to sort of belittle it or contribute to a misunderstanding of it. But there are ways in which the urge to level up can become problematic. That if we're gamifying our lives and seeing it that way, that there is, making an impact, and leveling up in a significant way, not just in a DVD game, but in a significant way. It takes more investment than I think sometimes people coming out of the schools, at least in America and in certain schools over the past bunch of years, have had a hard time coming to terms with. And I'm not blaming that on the generation, but I'm saying that it is a reality that I think a lot of people have.
You can't always have a crime.
Yeah.
In World of Warcraft, you just you find all the pigs. I'm just going to kill all these pigs. It's 2 experience points, and I'm just going to do all of this for the next 7 weeks. I do this, I get this much experience, and you can quantify it. And that real life is
it's not how you're going to eradicate poverty. That's
Yeah.
not how
You're not going to kill pigs.
How we're getting jetpacks. We're not getting jetpacks.
Priorities.
This
That's not,
disassociation between growing up in a quantitative leveling environment and then going out into the real world where it's a qualitative more so, with maybe benchmarks of the promotions and raises occasionally, but more qualitative for the day-to-day.
It's also a factor of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivations, and in school you're often rewarded by these extrinsic factors like grades and comments, and I think it's hard for people to change it on their own as soon as they get out of school. And I don't think that there's right, exactly. So if you don't have that, then it's kind of hard to find that intrinsic motivation if you haven't learned how to look for it, or that should be there.
I just wanted to,
I've seen your answer.
But I didn't want to too far take it off. I actually want to come back to the methodological and the second one kind of example. You've got 2 threads here. You've got D&D, something that goes back decades, and also this idea of multi-generational gaming. Again, it might have been cool to say, oh well, these kids, are playing their video games. But that was like in the '80s. Like, this is now grandkids growing up with games. It's not a new.
The 80s seems so gamble.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like again, like. Yeah, you can go back pretty far with it, and I mean, it's like it's always really interesting when people like gaming is this new thing. I'm like, okay.
Never heard of chess?
Yeah, but
We go through cycles of the satanic panics around gaming.
oh yeah, I mean that's
And rock and roll. All the fun
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I mean, again, it was in the 19th century.
People cyclically freak out about gaming culture.
Well, we had the Pokemon Go thing, and people were, I think
Legitimately.
more people were playing Pokemon Go while driving than were playing D&D and trying to sound and say
Yeah, well, I mean,
You had to buy another book to sound the same.
yeah. I was just going to know that I was trying to figure out how you square that with this ephemeral nature of Twitch knowledge going away instantaneously and very much in the moment pop culture. So that like squaring that with the other side of gaming, which is so much bound to the current moment. Again, with like Second Life, like I knew that like social scientists were like all about it, and the media was like Second Life, this is amazing, and then nobody's given it a thought for a couple almost a decade now.
There are still people playing. There are still people playing.
Yeah, I'm just saying like,
But
but
there are
yeah,
still
yeah,
people
like
playing RuneScape.
attention. Yeah, right.
I'm not saying I don't like RuneScape. I'm just saying it's been around.
So speaking of the substantive leveling up, we recently at the YouTube Center of the Dragons Club decided to, in order to get in new members, we had 2 workshops. One was a campaign writing workshop to teach people how to write campaigns, and the other one was a dungeon master workshop to teach people the nuances of becoming a dungeon master. Because we have a club of about 50 people, and we only have about 3 dungeon masters. So we were trying to draw people in and teach them how, and essentially that whole I'm not good at writing thing, we found that the best way to do it was to actually let them copy things from other pop culture. And so it was very easy for them to create campaigns based off of other stories that have already happened. When they change them, and eventually become their own person in their own writing because they were at the start of the base. And it sort of struck me as sort of just like with the whole leveling up thing is that when you're younger, you sort of just copy what the older people are doing because you assume that's how it's supposed to be done. And as you get older and older and older, you start becoming your own person. So in life, there's no real real points where you level up. It's sort of just one long, you just become your own person and you start your own writing.
It's a dungeon master grind instead of playing character.
Yeah.
That's interesting because as you were saying that, I went, yes, I completely agree. I'm also an online writer of geeky things, and my most viewed series of articles are where I take a fandom like Sailor Moon and I turn the characters from that show into playable characters in 5e. And that has widespread use. And my first time being a dungeon master was actually DMing a game for players playing like Sailor Moon characters.
You even get repos from Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
So.
Wizards post reposted one of them. Great news for that. That was awesome. So I definitely see what you're saying, and I think that using other fandoms, pop culture, things in their daily lives is an easy way to make it relatable and have that entrance.
Going back to what you were saying about gamers and a lot of times actually being available. Several years ago, when the Obama administration actually gave kind of a shout out to those, including to several schools at East, who actually created psychology of media as a major in the school to focus on young trans gamers, consequently millennials, future and all that. All the schools at East were there somehow, and I was like, wait, where's how it is? I thought that was really interesting because they're about
I mean, I didn't hear about the Obama administration certainly heard about psychologists researching games recently and still ongoing. Yeah, that's
Something that does remind me is kind of goes back to the ARGs or alternate reality games. Makes me think of a game that Gina Brown created called World Without Oil, and she explains it by talking about how many people are actually playing games and how many hours they're collectively playing through every day and every week, and it's in the
I wouldn't even want to.
There is a
Conjecture at
wonderful
this
TED
point.
Talk she does
Yes.
about it. She has 2 TED Talks easily available online, so you can look those up
Yeah.
later. I highly recommend them.
But so she talks about how it's basically in the numbers so that it's something of a mass exodus of people from reality going into this game world, especially where they come from. And she talks about wanting to harness that kind of capital to help solve real world problems. And so that's where this game comes into play. And it's all online, I believe, and it has to do with creating a profile on there and having the whole premise that the world has reached peak oil. You only get so much allotment per day. So how are you going to spend your day? How are you going to reduce your carbon footprint? And she found that after they spoke with some of the people who played the game a year later or so, that many of them, the majority, were still using the habits they learned from the game to reduce
It has made a lasting impact. So that's talking about designing games in order to make an impact. And I was actually looking at people using games to make a different kind of impact. So when they're doing charity streams online, they will play games and incentivize them, add kind of a game layer on top of that already built game in order to have people donate towards this charity. And it really does work. For instance, I was at a charity drive at the beginning of the month, and we had a tattoo artist there, and they went, okay, if one person donates $1,500 before the end of the stream, and there are 5 hours or something to go, then this person here who volunteered will get this thing related to the channel tattooed on their body live on air. Within a minute, they had the donation. So they can do big incentives like that. There are smaller incentives that they do, and this leads to large numbers. The first charity drive I looked at in my research was Team Human raised over $160,000. They did another one the same year of $150,000. This one that I was just at was $73,000 raised to help orphan children be off the streets and with food, having therapy and education and scholarships for further education when they enter college for a full year. So there were 48 children that equated to living on the streets for a year.
I don't know if the discussion has moved on, but I'm still stuck on something that we talked about a few minutes ago, and that was the game life parallel or lack of parallel. And AJ, your comment about people kind of expressing this 6 months out back yet. And I feel like, so I'll just say that recently I've gotten more into the writings of German sociology and look back into the society and calculable uncertainty. Looks at it at multiple levels. And I just feel like that, the reason I love reading it, I feel like it just speaks to where we are right now as a society with ever increasing levels of inequality and all of the social disparities and now the administration and all of these things piling up and so we're all kind of faced with this situation where our risks and our life chances our chances are incalculable. The risks that we're facing and I see it in students too at present state, like the world that they're going out into with this degree, which is supposed to be worth something, what that's going to do for them and where they're going to get is I don't envy that situation at all. And whenever I hear that, I wonder, the students, is that their reaction to this incalculable risk? Is notch and then another notch, and you're constantly picking it up. How high can you pick it up, you know? And all the while not knowing with the certainty of the game, you know, like your comment just now about the certainty of the game, and if you want to put it this or that. I'm not a gamer, so that's I'll keep the word on that. But that's true. And that is not the way contemporary US works. At least, you know, if you're outside the verified, probably not more than 0.05% of people who are going to highly advanced have access to highly advanced and so on. So there's a radical divergence there between the experience of gaming and the experience of contemporary.
I would contribute also for a comment from our panelists is that I don't think it's unrelated to relationship building, and social media, and obviously the Twitch and all this, you know, there's the obvious sort of tie-ins to social media, but you know, there's so many studies, you know, across a variety, and obviously the psychologists have pointed to this as well, about amongst millennials, you know, being unfriended or unfollowed is like has a deep emotional impact. And so again, but old enough that like we couldn't. Hank said some awful things to me the other day, right? We didn't unfriend one another because our relationship was built slower, lasts slower, right? And will endure, you know, ups and downs or what have you in different ways. Whereas, you know, and it is a different way of building relationships. It is, you know. And again, I don't want to hyperstatize the, you know, generation gaps, and obviously the millennials is like a race is all race, not gender, ethnicity in a stupid way. But so I'm not trying to reify that. But at the same time, there is a difference in how we're building relationships, and that is not unrelated to leveling up or leveling down. And the dopamine levels that are triggered for leveling up, and how we experience that when someone, or heaven forbid, several people maybe unfriend us or unfollow us, right? Or maybe our Twitch channel numbers are just tanking. I'm saying that like pretending I have
Well, actually, towards your point, that caused a small little bit of anxiety in me, going, I should check my Twitch number.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like I couldn't lose Hank all the moments, right? And it's just because I didn't acquire Hank all the moments. You know, it was incremental. It wasn't a binary on-off. You know.
And that is something that occurred during my research. There was a program put out that was perceived by Team Homan as a way to just get money from them without getting anything in return or actually caring about the community. And because of that, it started a hashtag which was fuck this program. It became this big thing that was spamming, and when the video announcing it went up on their YouTube channel, they lost hundreds of followers within the next hours, and it was the first time in months, because I could track that information on YouTube, that they lost subscribers. And eventually they bounced back and started gaining subscribers again, but because of that video, I could trace it to exactly when it came out, and the losses started at that point. So there is a very visceral reaction that occurs, but at the same time, that visceral reaction might be immediate. Some of those people come back. So
and I can't help it. I mean, that's kind of a indicative thing about the internet. It's like there's definitely different ways that people interact than face to face. Like certainly, well, not always, but I mean, you know, the difference between a close friend you have online, that's where a lot of your social circle is, versus a strong tie versus a loose tie. So you might have a disagreement with somebody on the internet that you are close with, and maybe it wouldn't have this shattering effect. But when you're talking about these large groups, people are kind of loosely following somebody or loosely connected or interested in somebody's work, and then that person says something they don't like, and all of a sudden they quit.
Real quick on the subject of the whole, Twitch chat. So in a lot of games, especially like World of Warcraft, you can pretty easily follow what's going on in like friend chat or chat between people, and you can see the relationships going on Twitch.
Yeah, Twitch did this thing in the middle of my research, which I was thankful for and hopefully will help future Twitch researchers, where instead of just being able to see the video on demand, what was being put on the live stream for the next 2 weeks, it had a chat archive showing you in real time what was being said while that video was live streamed. So it's a pain, but you can pause and actually read through that way. I was very lucky that I had connections who actually wrote programs to archive the chat logs for the chats I was looking at. They were moderators who wanted to have those saved, so in case someone who was banned came in and said, "Why was I banned? I'm a totally nice person," they could go back and say, "It's because of these rules that you wrote on this day at this time." So because of that, I had access to the archive logs already and had them in a nice text format, but Twitch did add in that feature. It's
So
not
there is no redirected file under ethical considerations why that would not be available.
No, all the information is public, and because Twitch itself has made it available for the 2 weeks if you're not a subscriber or a Prime member, these are levels you don't really have to care about. All you need to know is some people only get their video saved for 2 weeks, some get them saved for 3 months. And it's just about basically how much Twitch values you as a partner.
I actually want to make a quick comment about, because you guys were talking about this 2 week thing and kind of the temporality of this data. But I was thinking, and now obviously there's the issue that you're dealing with a lot of information or a lot of chat or a lot of video at the same time. But I'm thinking of like, ethnographers in the past would be like, I can have 2 weeks to look at this thing that in a real field, like if you miss it going by or if you're standing in the wrong place. I mean, if you're in a room at a party and there's 100 people, who would you stand next
It's
to?
kind of that progression, right, of starting with just your notebook and taking notes that way to moving on to digital recording devices and then video recording devices. So I see it as part of that, and I don't think that we as anthropologists should ever be like, no, I'm good. I don't need anything more to help me collect data. It's fine.
This culture is finished.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I did create was an online survey, and originally because Twitch itself isn't great about collecting data and then communicating what that data is to its broadcasters. So the companies I was working with wanted to have a better idea of what shows people were watching. So I created a survey and I included the shows for both of the organizations. They change shows because Twitch moves so quickly. They have to change out things that aren't working or things that only work temporarily and put new things in. And I can't update that survey once it's gone live already. So that information goes, well, a year ago, people really liked this show that you were playing, but you finished that after 3 months. So, maybe bring it back once in a while. It definitely impacted what I can analyze off of those surveys, what is actually useful to the organizations and to my employees. Your hand has been up for a while.
Going off what you were saying around having technology, things like that, have you seen any of the comments about an argument behind the
People haven't made that argument in what I have seen. People do like to make the argument of free speech everywhere they go. I like to post that meme that actually explains what free speech is and that, yes, you have the right to say what you want, but we don't have the right, we don't have the obligation to listen to it, that kind of thing. And talking about public spaces and government things and going into those details. But people, even if it's not about the game being related to free speech, they like to make it about chat rooms.
Interested in like the crossover between Twitch and TikTok
popular.
Yeah, but I guess like the interactions of taking something that is usually a really intimate gathering and opening it, to maybe some oftentimes this kind of very brief and less kind of maybe emotionally rich kind of engagements and even something out there like the monetizing piece of that, like where it now is like it opens it like well yeah I mean but yeah no right but it still seems almost like again I just finished reading Natasha Schultz's Addiction by Design and like keep thinking of keep hitting the button and push your credits into the machine. Oddly enough it's like the philanthropy thing you're like well I don't know if I want to discourage people from this behavior but like you're now throwing an extra kind of social wrench into
I
this.
have had to discourage people from that behavior actually.
So I am a moderator for both the organizations I work with. If you want to talk about the ethical complications of that, come to the 415 panel that I'm on. But one of my jobs for HyperRPG was actually as a liaison for a group in this metagame they have, which is based on Shadowrun, another tabletop RPG. Very complex system. I'm not going to try and explain it here. But they have corporations, and all the corporations are evil, basically. And in the metagame, you could join a corporation, and you could donate towards that corporation, and the amount that you raised for your corporation directly impacted how many actions you could take that week, and attacking other corporations or influencing the actual game on screen. So my corporation ended up being one of the two that donated the most money in less than a year time frame. Mine as a whole donated almost $30,000. And one of our top donators actually he is a school teacher on a very limited budget, and he just really loves the game that much that he kept donating. And even in the beginning, he's like, well, I don't need to get a new PC set up. I can put my computer money that I've been saving towards helping out the corporation. And it got to the point where I'd be like, hey, I love you guys. You're amazing. Don't donate more than you can. Don't value this metagame over your own lives.
But that's part of the, I mean, like Jeff was saying,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure
that
Addiction by
addiction.
Design
Well, I
covers
think I
that.
have micropayments in games too, like
Oh, it's only $10
yeah.
every day, 10 times a day, or whatever it is.
You know, good job, guys. We're going to run the time out. We're not there yet, but we're going to run the time out and leave stuff on the table. So that's really good. But, I want to go back to something that you said, Anne Marie. When you talked about the Sims Online, about the role of the archaeologist.
Yeah, that's really good. Expansion of we did different career choices, and one of them was basically around basically an archaeologist, she's a replication of in I actually tricked my friends into playing it to see what it like. We also had like 5 to 10 people and other ones. I found it really interesting that they actually chose archaeologists.
So what scares the daylight out of me is what kind of archaeology.
Indiana Jones
Yeah,
style.
very much Indiana Jones.
This is relic of a living community that values it as part of their cultural heritage. You know what I mean? Like, it could go very much go wrong.
Yeah, I played part of it, and for some of it, like we're in Japan, they have a very good but you have to go to specific places and learn from the people before you go. But then they also have the cheats where you can just buy equipment at home and play with it, and you go there first, buy it, and take it. So that was one of my concerns too, is to buy archaeology. At least it's something where they didn't know what archaeology is. Everybody knows Indiana Jones was but
Bad professor too.
We can have a debate between Indy and Laura Croft.
Yeah.
Oh, good point.
in the little.
Yeah.
Which they do, at least at San Jose State. Marco Menichetti teaches the introduction to archaeology, and he usually starts with some kind of Indiana Jones story.
I started with dinosaurs and I couldn't figure it out. You're not here to study dinosaurs.
You're right, I'm not.
Thanks.
So speaking of archaeology and gaming, a couple of expansions ago, World of Warcraft introduced an archaeology profession. And having played it and having maxed that statistic on my character, I can tell you, I do not want anyone coming to college having a record for that. Because in that game, you don't even, your only equipment is like a weird telescope with a light on it. And you put down the telescope, and if the light is red, then you're nowhere near where you need to be, but the telescope is pointing towards an artifact. And if you get there, you find something sticking out of the ground slightly. And it's associated with whatever race used to live in that area. But you take it and then you destroy it. And you use the pieces to build something that you can use, like a sword or a new axe.
I'm so thankful.
There's one point where you're actually in an area that used to be inhabited by dwarves, and you go to an active archaeology site to dig things up, and then you destroy them.
I'm going to become an Indiana Jones apologist.
But why is it a museum?
Of unlearning
Yeah.
so much that we've been indoctrinated with in various forms. And so I hope that more people than not are move on to that level of education and start that learning process. Which I have a question. What was the book you recommended?
Oh, so the author is Ulrich Beck, and so he writes in German, but there's a lot much of stuff translated. I guess what would you recommend? The Risk Society or the Theory of Third Modernity. There's a lot. That's part of the title. I'll get the whole title. Let's get something like the Theory of Third Modernity.
You had a comment?
Well, to the archaeology out of
Wow.
World of Warcraft. Okay, just say that. Isn't that exactly what is now happening with the removal of national monument status?
Yeah. It's pretty similar in that things are being devalued and only valued for what they things currently, in my opinion, are being devalued and only valued for what they can bring us.
Yeah.
If we can extort them essentially.
There is no preservation, it's only exploitation.
Yeah. So it's completely illogical in most cases. For one, we're completely destroying, national monuments and stuff that we can learn from, and in that we're destroying the base and somehow making a sword out of it. But
So it's currently 10:01.
We want to thank you for a really great discussion. It went really well and it was very interesting. And if anybody wants to continue talking about this,
And I have business cards if people want to continue it online.
We also have a very brief
Oh, yes.
select bibliography. We only have 10 copies, but if more people want copies of it,
And
you can
anybody
email
would
one
like
of those.
For those who did show up later, we did record this session. Today is International Tabletop Day, which kind of made a gaming salon session make perfect sense. So we recorded it so that we can put it up on YouTube. If you do not want to be up on YouTube, let me know. If you're sitting on this side, we unfortunately weren't able to get your faces. So if you don't want to be up on YouTube, you won't be. But for those who are here and you don't want to be up, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
yeah, I actually did, but I'll take another one.
You can smile.
You guys don't mind, we have to reset the room.
Yeah,
The next
yeah.
panel will
It's
start
not salon
in 10 minutes.
anymore.
It's gotta be-
So this was what I was talking about.
studying the
Goodbye,
effects of
Internet.
violence